Hello, Yakri here with another Warframe video. This time I want to talk to you about the value of viral damage and stacking damage multipliers. So in particular, I think viral gets a little bit underrated in favor of corrosive a lot of the time. Now, this is somewhat warranted, especially if you're playing by yourself or with random pub groups. Anytime when enemies have a significant amount of armor, meaning that they're level 50 or higher and nothing is being done to reduce their armor already, then corrosive damage is pretty worthwhile, because stripping enemy armor can give you anywhere from a 2 times to like a 5 times damage bonus in missions you can normally get into. Very high levels, it can be much higher. However, you know, that's not something that you normally have happen in over the course of Warframe. It might be something you would encounter in very high level Sanctuary Onslaught runs if you didn't bring 4x corrosive projections, but you really should if you're trying to do high tier elite Sanctuary Onslaught runs. So let's talk about why this is, right? So viral damage has, you know, bonuses to a couple damage types. Flesh and clone flesh, it's not as good versus infested flesh at -50, and it's not that good against machines at -25%. But everything else, it's neutral versus, okay? So compare this to corrosive. So corrosive has a 75% bonus for fossil, which is nice, of course. 50% penalty versus proto, and a 75% bonus versus ferrite alloy, or ferrite armor. Excuse me. So here's the thing: corrosive is not as good, or not better than viral versus any enemy type, any armor type, any flesh type even. Right, so there's no case where you're shooting at an enemy and that enemy doesn't have armor, as in actual like armor points for damage reduction percentage, and viral does less damage than corrosive. There isn't a situation like that can exist. Corrosive only beats out viral in the sense that it what's the word I'm looking for here? Strips armor from enemies, right? So here's what I mean by that. So you might be saying like, oh, Yakari, what about the 50% penalty for infested and the 25% penalty for machines? Corrosive does not have any penalties there. Well, I'm glad you asked, because let's look at what actually goes on here, right? So if you deal 2 damage to an enemy, and that damage is multiplied. Oh, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself here. So viral damage effectively doubles the damage that enemies take. If your enemy has 100 HP, viral cuts it in half, right? So that's going to be turned into 50 HP. And if the enemy takes 2 damage, right? Hold on. Fuck this up. The enemy takes 2 damage, so, right? So 50 minus 2 equals 48. Now, if their HP goes back up to 100, right? The viral proc wears off. This is going to turn into 96 hit points for them. They've taken 4 damage. That's double the damage you dealt to them, 2 damage. That's because the amount of damage they take is basically not modified, of course, right? You're still dealing 2 damage to them whether or not they have half health, and then the amount of health they have remaining is proportionate to the amount of health that they lost. Now, you're probably going to kill them before their viral proc wears off, but the effect is the same either way. You're dealing double damage to them because you're halving their HP. Right? So they have half as much health. That means that effectively it takes half as much damage to kill them. Yeah, I think you get the idea. So let's talk about what we're really on about here, which is why viral is always good. So that there's if you can reasonably expect to proc an enemy quickly, at least. This is kind of the case for corrosive as well, because if the weapon can't fire quickly, corrosive isn't very good because you're not going to get a lot of procs off. So if you're going to expect to proc the enemy fairly early on in fighting them, you can say that there's a 2 times damage multiplier on your damage. So you're going to deal 4 damage here. Now, let's say you're versus, what was it? 50% penalty against infested flesh. So versus infested flesh with viral damage, your damage is multiplied by 0. Oh, I'm pen wrong. 0.5. Okay. So this is going to deal 2 damage. And if you had a corrosive damage weapon, it would just be 2 damage equals 2 damage. That's all there is to it. So in this case, corrosive is equal to viral. However, suppose that this multiplier is gone. Well, if this multiplier is gone, you're going to deal 2 damage, and you're actually not going to deal 2 damage. Sorry, you're going to deal 4 damage. Yeah, this is a big eraser. You're going to deal 4 damage. Okay, so let's talk about the case where you have no bonus, and corrosive has a 75% bonus. Okay, so that's going to be 2 times 1.75 for corrosive. That's 3.5 damage versus your 4 damage baseline. Okay, so this is the worst case. This is probably the second worst case for viral, right? So you do 3.5. 5 because there's a 1.75 multiplier. It's very sloppy, but you get the idea, right? So yeah, 3.5 damage to 4 damage. So viral is still better. In fact, viral is going to be better or as good in all cases. So that's just how the cookie crumbles versus corrosive. As long as enemies don't have armor. That's the key thing. If they do have armor, if you're not playing a Warframe that strips all enemy armor off, or if you're not playing with 4x corrosive projection, then this isn't true. You can just ignore it and move on, right? So if they do have armor, that's the case. You know, screw it. Now that's pretty much the whole case for viral, actually. If you're, especially if you're doing a high status chance slow damage weapon as well, or slow firing weapon, right? So like the Lanka. Let's say I probably want to do my Lanka gas build, but let's say I don't care about doing a Lanka gas build. I'm firing some other weapon that's like a sniper rifle, and it has a high status chance. Well, if I'm sniping enemies with high status, and I can viral proc them, probably on the first shot, then, and I'm just gonna take me like 2 shots to kill them, then I should be running viral instead of corrosive, right? Okay. It's also good for cases where you can hit a whole crowd of enemies. There's another thing that's really nice about this, and it's kind of the same thing can actually be said for corrosive's armor strip, right? Is that this damage, actually, I put this inside brackets, I really shouldn't have. A better way to describe it is you've got a couple sections of multipliers, right? And these matter a little bit. So in here, you can have multipliers that go on the enemy. Did I spell that correctly? Yeah. So this is like multiplies the amount of damage the enemy takes. So for example, we could have Nova's ultimate in here times 2, and we can also have viral damage in here times 2. So this means that anything that damages an enemy will be multiplied by the multipliers in here. So this is a total of 4. So enemies are taking 4 times damage from everything if you've viral procced them and got Nova's ult on them. That means Warframe abilities, weapons, etc. Any sort of effect at all. This is really nice because not everything modifies Warframe ability damage, and Warframe ability damage is really good to modify. So let's say we've also got, so then over here we would have, this gets multiplied again by whatever you're using to deal damage to the enemy. Let's call it weapons, right? Yeah, I'm shitty at writing on this still, but okay. So we've got your base weapon damage, say, well, this isn't multiplied base weapon damage, but wait, yeah, your base weapon damage is multiplied in here. So we've got your base weapon damage, say that's 2. I'm just having lots of 2s, right? Maybe I'll make it 3. I won't multiply it out because that's not a really good, whatever. Okay, and let's say we've got Rhino's Roar at 100% bonus. That is effectively another times 2. So let's look at what's going on here, right? So you've got your base weapon damage times 2. That's going to be 6. And 6 times 4 is going to be, I should probably be able to math this out in my head faster than that, 24. So you're going to deal 24 damage. Let's look at this another way. So let's take your 24 damage. So the actual multiplier is going to end up being a lot higher, right? So if we, here, can I get a smaller eraser here? Here we go. So let's get rid of this. Let's say we've got all 2s here. This is like kind of a nice easy math thing. So we've got 16 damage is what's going on. Yeah, right. This is going to equal 16 damage. And if we take out this 2, this is gonna be 8, right? This is the multiplier you've got. You've got an 8 times multiplier right here, and that's pretty fucking high. It'll stack with any other multipliers that fit in a similar area, right? So any other weapon multipliers it'll stack with, and any other multipliers to enemy damage that'll stack with. Now let's say you have a weapon multiplier, it'll stack with that, but it won't also stack with, like, you can have a weapon multiplier that doesn't affect Warframe abilities. So if you had some Warframe ability right down here and it dealt like 5 damage, this would get multiplied by these over here, but not by any weapon modifiers, okay? Unless it explicitly is modified by weapon modifier. Okay, so I think that pretty much explains that. You get to a really high bonus really quickly like that. You can easily, with weapons that crit and have a, Kind of depends. All right, so if you have weapon damage, that weapon damage is going to be multiplied by its critical amount, right? So let's say you have a weapon that has 1,000 damage and it crits for 10 times damage, right? So that's 10,000. And you've multiplied it by Rhino's Roar, but for 100%, that's going to be 20,000 damage. And then we're going to multiply that 20,000 by 4 times for 80,000 damage. Did I do that right? Yeah, 80,000 damage. So it stacks up very quickly like that. And then maybe it's like a headshot as well, or so you do something else to multiply it. Maybe you also were getting Chroma's Vex Armor Aura. Then just the damage goes nuts. It's actually absolutely bonkers damage, because it increases your base weapon damage, and then that all gets multiplied. Yeah, it's very good. It's very good. So that's why viral damage is good. The reason viral damage is good is because it is one of these modifiers, right? So we've got viral damage, or viral proc is over here, multiplying damage the enemies take, and so it makes your effective damage with viral quite good all the time. Yeah, that's pretty much the whole story. I think viral's a little bit underused, perhaps. Compared to a lot of advice that people get thrown out, which gets thrown out to people, which is it's just a mod for corrosive for everything. But slashing, you should probably keep in mind here. So I think viral is underused, but I'm not comparing it to slashing damage, even though slash damage is totally better, probably, mostly, because slash damage for most weapons is like something that's baked in, right? You're stuck with your slash damage percentage, and you can't necessarily increase it because IPS mods suck unless it's a massively already slashing damage weapon. Then sometimes you can use the better IPS mod, and you're gonna probably have to stick on non or elemental damage types. You're probably gonna have a complex elemental damage type, almost certainly, unless you're trying to avoid it intentionally. And even then, you might have to have at least one elemental damage type that probably could be a complex type instead. So what I'm saying here basically is that if you if you've got a slashing weapon already and you need to have an elemental type on it, and you want to be really effective versus enemies that don't have armor, get viral damage. Viral damage is fantastic. There's also the whole deal with gas damage. I have a whole other video about why gas damage is so good. And in a lot of cases, maybe gas damage would be a better choice. But they're both quite good, and in some cases you can do cool combinations. Like I should do another talk about the phage, because the phage can have 3 complex damage types, and it's really nice. And it lets you do some fancy shit. Anyhow, but that's kind of an aside. So yeah, viral damage is very good, a little bit underrated. Yeah. All right, that's all I had to say. If you like this content and you want to see more like it, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you have a suggestion for something you'd like to see me talk about in a similar vein, maybe talk about what the uses for some other damage type is, or why something's bad, or why something's good, or something you want to know more about in the game, but you just want to have a video for it and not have to look it up yourself and test a bunch of shit, let me know, and I will see what I can do about that, possibly. Thank you all for watching. Yakri out.